Here we go again with Unit 7B Genetics Review. Alrighty, folks, we're going to scroll on down. This one's mostly multiple choice. In 1910, Thomas Morgan discovered that traits linked to sex chromosomes in the fruit fly. The Punnett square to the right shows a cross between a red-eyed female, remember females have two X chromosomes, and red is dominant, so they have two big R's, and a white-eyed male, so males are XY, and he has a little r because he's white-eyed. Fruit flies usually have red eyes. If a female and a male have the offspring, so you're going to now breed the offspring, so you have to do a second Punnett square. So if you breed these guys, what you're going to see is you're going to get one female that's big R, so they're going to have red eyes, and another female that is big R, little r, so also red eyes. Then for your males, you'll have one that has a big R and one that has the little r with the Y, okay? So you're going to get one freaky little white-eyed male. So you should have got C for that answer if you did your Punnett square. Number 2, in pea plants, tall plants are dominant to short plants. If two heterozygous, which is here, remember hetero means different, so big and a little, are crossed, what percent of the offspring will be short? Well, short's recessive. We got one freaky little short kid, so it's like quarters in a dollar, right? So one of them is 25%. 3, one way to increase an endangered species population is allow inbreeding, like my fish tank. However, this may also lead to species extinction because when you inbreed, you're going to have the same kind of genes showing up, and sometimes they're bad genes and sometimes they're okay. But overall, you're going to reduce your genetic variation when you're inbreeding. All right, number 4, in a species of winter squash, the allele for lobed is dominant and unlobed ears is recessive. What will likely result if you cross two heterozygous lobed leaf plants? So you can do your Punnett square, and it says highlight all that apply. And if you do your Punnett square with two heterozygous individuals, you're going to see that 3 of them have dominant alleles, and then you have one freaky little recessive person. So the only answer that is correct is B, that you have a 25% chance of inheriting a little l allele, and then the other one be a 75 chance of being lobed. Okay. So we got a blood stain. This was actually a Bell question we did. The blood stain and who matches it. So hopefully you remember that. It matches John. John's blood matches the blood stain perfectly if you look at the bands of DNA. Which genotype is homozygous? Homo means the same. So the only one that's the whole same the whole way through is A, where you have two homozygous dominant sets of alleles. 7, a student did an experiment to determine the genetic ratios between the tall pea plant and a dwarf pea plant. What phenotypic ratio is expected between this cross? So if you do your Punnett square, 2 of your babies are going to be tall and 2 of your babies are going to be dwarfs. And so what you'll see is C. 8, a pet rabbit named Sparky has a dark coat. So it has at least a capital D allele. So right away, when we're looking at our answers, we know C must not be correct. Sparky has to have a big D. So C is not even an option. And he was mated with an albino female. Lucy has a little d. Now, Lucy, in order to be albino, has to have 2 little d's to show that recessive trait. So we already ruled out C. If you look at A, it's the only one where she has 2 little d's. So we don't even need to look at the rest of the question to figure it out. By process of elimination, you can figure out what's going on. But let's just go through it anyway. So they have 6 babies that were born. Lucy was mated with another dark-coated rabbit named Elwood. Some of Lucy and Elwood's litter were dark-coated and some were albino. So remember, Lucy's albino. So to get some dominant babies, Elwood must have a dominant gene. But we also still had some recessive babies, so he also must have a recessive gene. And so he's heterozygous. We have a cross of chinchillas made between a father with genotype Big B and mom with little b. If black hair is dominant to white in chinchillas, what are the chances of having a white baby? So if you did your Punnett square, all the babies come out heterozygous, which means they're all going to be black. You have a 0% chance of getting a white baby. Number 10, you have a cross between two plants that produce pink flowers and recessive white flowers, resulting in 200 offspring. 149 of them were pink and 51 were white. What's most likely the genotypes of the plants that were crossed? Well, you notice that 149 is basically 3 times 51, roughly. So this is a 3-to-1 ratio. So you're looking at what would give you a 3-to-1 ratio. Well, if both parents were dominant, all the babies would be dominant and you wouldn't get any white ones. So you can rule that one right out. If both parents were totally recessive, then all you would get was white ones, and that didn't happen. So you can rule that one out. If one parent had big P, then and the other one was little p, they'd all be heterozygous and they all still would look dominant. So the only one that even makes any kind of sense is B, where you get, if you do that Punnett square, 25% of your kids get 2 little p's. Those are your white ones. All right, number 11, a researcher is studying the inheritance of flower position in pea plants. The allele for axial flower position is dominant over the allele for terminal flower position. The researcher crosses 2 pea plants with the genotypes big P, little p, little p, little p. What are the genotypes of the offspring? So if you do your Punnett square, half your kids are going to be big P, little p, and the other half are going to have 2 little p's. So you're going to have C is your correct answer. 12, gel electrophoresis is a method to separate DNA fragments. What determines how far the fragments will travel? That is by size. Remember, the smaller pieces will travel farther and the longer pieces get tied up in the gel earlier on in the process. Hope this helps, guys. Bye.